Hi, everybody. Welcome to week two of our daily devotions. We all survived week one, and we're now launching into week two. And we've been talking about how is it that our faith forms us and informs us during these challenging times? How can we make sure that we're having the Christian response to what it is that the Lord has led us into? Because we want to be faithful to Him. We want to be faithful during these times. So we're simply asking God, what are you up to? How can I respond in the very best way possible? And we've been talking on a large scale since the middle of last week of what is it that God does during times of trouble and testing. What does that look like? Um, what are God's purposes behind these kinds of things, of at the very least allowing this to happen? And we've looked at a number of them so far that God uses this to reveal the strength of our faith. God uses this to humble us. He uses this to wean us off of earthly things. He uses this to force a focus on heavenly hope. And for a few minutes today, I want to talk to you about a fifth purpose that God has during times of trouble. And it's this: God reveals what we really love. When you are driving your car, in your face is a dashboard, and that's there for a very good purpose. You can't see what's underneath the hood of your car, so you don't know if things are going well under there, if they're not going well under there. You rely on the dashboard to feed you the information of what's underneath the surface. Your life has a dashboard. You've got a physical gauge, you've got a mental and intellectual gauge, you have an emotional gauge, you have a spiritual gauge, and you need to be always looking at those, monitoring them. How are things going underneath the surface? But your soul has a gauge that lets you know what's happening under the surface. And God has a way of revealing what's there, of kind of pulling back the hood and saying, this is what's happening in your soul, for good or for bad. So again, these are very good things. This is a gift from the Lord to let us know, hey, this is what's really going down here. And God has a way of revealing our true affections. Um, for example, 2 Corinthians chapter 8. We used this yesterday as the offering intro during the live streamed church service of uh, this is what generosity is and giving is. The Apostle Paul is praising the Macedonian churches for their great example of generosity and helping the poor in Jerusalem. And they're taking up this great offering. And Paul is telling the Corinthians to follow their example. And in all of chapter 8 and all of chapter 9 of Second Corinthians, Paul is teaching about giving and about generosity. But here's part of what he says. The last verse of chapter 8 says, "So give proof before the churches of your love." So, what the Bible's teaching us is that our giving is a proof. It reveals what we really love. If we love people, if we love the Lord, if those are really our true affections, then our giving's going to show that. So we can monitor our giving. We can monitor what's happening with our financial lives, and it will reveal to us what our loves truly are. You know, Jesus said this in Matthew chapter 6 that our affections and our money are tied, that wherever our money goes, our heart's going to go with it. And that's a good thing because it's revealing what's really there. Uh, Another example is in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 13. The Israelites have been released out of slavery in the Exodus. God, put the great plagues on Egypt, and Moses leads them out, and they've been wandering in the desert for 40 years, and they stand now on the edge of the promised land, and they're ready to go into this place that God has given to them. But the fact of the matter is, the promised land is filled with people. There are people groups there. There are all of these pagan peoples that occupy this section of land. And God says, I'm going before you. and I will drive out the nations before you. You just need to know that that's happening. So, calm down. You don't have to be afraid of all of them. I'm going to go before you and take care of all of this. Well, along with that came this ongoing teaching from the Lord that, hey, this is going to be hard. Not necessarily militarily, because I'm going to drive them out for you, but there are going to be some who remain, and their pagan practices are going to remain. So temptation is coming for you to worship their false gods. You have the one true God in Israel, and I've proven that in Egypt. He always goes back to Egypt. Here's what you saw, what I did. Um, but he says you're going to be tempted to worship those pagan gods. And you're also going to be tempted, that it's a bit more subtle of a temptation, you're going to be tempted to worship me like they worship their gods. But don't do that, because everything that they do in the worship of their pagan false gods, God says, I hate. The ESV calls it abominable. I detest what they do. At the end of Deuteronomy 12, he even tells them um, they they sacrifice their sons and daughters to their pagan gods. Don't you dare start thinking that that's what I desire from you. Don't get lost in the midst of this challenging, difficult time. But then at the beginning of 13, he tells them, so if a prophet arises among you, or a dreamer of dreams, and claims that it's from God, and if they say to you, God is revealing to me that we should worship these other gods or worship like the people worship these other gods, God says, don't believe that prophet, don't believe that person, which is always good counsel for those who claim to speak with the authority of God. That God, well, the Lord's telling me, He's revealing to me, and a bunch of that junk's happening right now with this virus around the world, and all these false prophets are saying all these goofy things. The Lord's counsel is just to dismiss all of that, and that's always a wise thing to do. But here's what He says as God's people are headed into the promised land with this time of challenge and temptation in front of them. He says this, Deuteronomy 13:3. You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. So as you go, as you experience all of this temptation and trouble that's coming your way, God is testing you to see if you really love Him. He's going to let you go through this, and that's going to reveal, do you really love Him? And he goes on to say that that love looks like faithfulness. It looks like obedience to His commands. So if you go into this place and you crash and burn, and you are unfaithful to the Lord, and you go and do everything that I've told you not to do, then you don't really love God. Hey, sis, it's very, very clear. But if you remain faithful to Him, then obviously you love God, because it has revealed your affections. Friends, as we go through these difficult times, in the varying degrees of difficulty, whatever that might be for you, this is revealing what it is that you really love. I think we've all learned we really love our comforts and lives of ease. We like it when things go well for us. We love our freedoms. We love to be able to go and do what we want, when we want, how we want. Um, we love our plans and our schedules, and it's been really hard for all of that to be turned upside down. It's not a bad thing to love your freedom. It's not a bad thing to love uh, comfort. Those aren't bad things. The problem comes when those become so prolific of loves, that our affections are so strong for them that they overwhelm our love for anything else. So, what is this revealing about your affections? Do you love the Lord, um, or are you crashing and burning right now? So last week, and let's just deal with a very sensitive issue that um, I don't think the majority of people who are watching this are going to deal with, but I think there are going to be a handful that this might be a very real thing. And let's just talk to you for a couple of minutes so that we can make sure we get this thing settled. One of the days last week, and I don't remember which one because all of the days are running together and every day feels like Saturday. So I don't really quite remember which day it was. But we talked about the first purpose that God has during times of trouble, that He tests the strength of our faith. He reveals what's really there. And I think for some people, and again, I don't think it's a bunch, but I think there's certainly some that have to acknowledge that as we've gone into this difficult time, outside of the normal habits we have, outside of the normal routines we have, of going to church and doing the things that we do, what it revealed is not necessarily a weakness of faith, but an absence of faith. Um, that that maybe you thought there was more in your soul than there was when there's not really anything there. There isn't really faith. And maybe here's some ways to know that, or as you've gone through this, I'm not sure I love the Lord. He's not even been on my mind during all of this. So, I think if you go through this time and you're trying to figure out the realities of your life now, if God's not a part of the picture, if you come to this realization all of a sudden that, I haven't prayed one time, I haven't picked up my Bible one time, I've given very little thought to how my faith should impact all of this, friends, you need to be asking whether you really have any faith. Um, because if it's not even a concern for you, then maybe it's not really there. Or if you've been released from these habits of going to church and all the normal routines of life, and you've slipped deeply into some patterns of sin, um, all that reveals is that your patterns of life were keeping you from some sin. It wasn't your love for God that was keeping you from it. Um, it was some religious habits or some professional habits. It wasn't affection for the Lord. So if your free time now is overwhelmed with some personal sin, then you need to be asking, is the Lord real in my life or not? Am I, again, as Deuteronomy 13 says, am I following him? Am I showing love for him? Am I doing what he says to do? Because if I'm not, then I don't really love him. So I know this is really uncomfortable to talk about, but the Apostle Paul tells us at the end of Second Corinthians, I think it's chapter 13, maybe around verse 5, something like that, where Paul says, examine yourselves to see if you are in the faith. I mean, that's a blunt in your face sort of confrontation. Examine to see if you're really there, because the chances, I mean, the fact of the matter is this: you might not be. You might have been playing a religious game. You like going to church; it makes you feel better. You like singing some songs. Again, they're kind of inspiring. You like hearing maybe some motivational talk, um, but at the end of the day, it's not it's not very real for you. And times like this, outside of normal routines, reveal that. So, do you love the Lord? Are your affections for Him there? And are they growing? And you can know that by your desire to be with Him, to talk to Him, to learn about Him in the Scriptures, to be obedient to His commands. And if those things aren't there, then be honest about that. That I think this is empty for me. And if that's you, if you are one of the rare ones that might be going through that right now, you are characterized by fear and anxiety, not by faith. If that's what's happening for you right now, um, acknowledge that that's true. Don't fake it. The Lord already knows. Don't fake that. Don't deceive yourself into thinking you're something that you're not. Instead, cry out to the Lord for His mercy. Ask Him to save you. He promises to do that. He loves you. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, He gave His only Son. God has proven His love for you at the cross of Jesus Christ. His affections are for you, even if yours are not for Him right now. His affections are for you and wants you to come to Him in repentance. And, 2 Peter 3, He wants all to come to repentance and to the knowledge of the truth. So, 1 Timothy 2:4 says the same thing. Um, so fall before Him and cry out for His mercy. Acknowledge that you're a sinner. Acknowledge that this has not been real for you, and ask the Lord to save you. And in His faithfulness, He will. And you can begin this new journey of real, legitimate faith. For the rest of us, this is a helpful self-examination time that maybe it didn't reveal that your soul is empty, but that it's just weak. And I think all of us have some different areas of weakness. Nobody is really knocking it out of the park all the time. Some of us strike out from time to time. We're normal people. Um, that doesn't mean absence of faith. It means some weak areas. So, what has the Lord revealed? Be paying attention to that. Look at the dashboard. And what is this teaching us about our affections? And how can we go about strengthening them? Because First John says we love because He first loved us. God's love is overwhelming by the work of Jesus Christ on our behalf, and our response is to give Him our affections. So where is that lacking, so that we can shore that up and make sure that our lives, our hearts, our affections, our souls are devoted to Him. So I hope this has been a blessing to you. We love you, we miss you, and we'll see you tomorrow with another daily devotion. God bless.